Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. And you may have noticed I'm not at Longmeadow today because this is a special Gardener's World. And I've come here to London to show you this. This is the Queen Elizabeth II garden. That has been 2 years in the making, and we've been following it along every step of the way, and we'll be sharing those stages with you throughout the programme. It opens to the public in 10 days' time, but for today, we have an exclusive preview. So, let's enjoy it in all its glory. The garden is situated in Regent's Park and has been created to commemorate the life of our longest reigning monarch, who would have celebrated her 100th birthday on the 21st of April. Queen Elizabeth II was famously a countrywoman at heart, who found her greatest joy in the outdoors. She had a number of plants named after her, including a pink floribunda rose to mark her accession to the throne, and a ruffled salmon pink fragrant sweet pea. The new garden was commissioned as a living tribute to her extraordinary life and service. The visitor enters and immediately is confronted with a large pergola, clothed at the moment with Clematis alpina. And this is made from salvaged metal from glasshouses that stood on this site. There's a big pond in front, clear water now, but spring moves into summer. Plants both in the water and on the margins will flower and grow. And a wide path, looking a bit like a runway, leads out into the garden beyond. This represents the longevity of the late Queen's reign. And at the end of it, flowering today, just for me, is a magnolia. Now, at the moment, you stand here and look out and you just see a sea of colour from all the bulbs. But actually the garden, although it's not huge, is made up of many different parts, all of which have their own interest and their own characteristics. Of the many different sections and areas in the garden, this is the one that struck me most. It's an incredibly vivid display, dominated by tulips, but not actually the tulips that most of us grow in our gardens, because these are many species tulips. There is Clusiana, saxatilis. These are delicate flowers, and it looks to me the sort of thing that you would see in a Mediterranean hillside here in the middle of London. Now, there is a reason for that, which we'll come to later, but at this moment, it is looking absolutely fantastic. Sitting here looking out across this great mass of daffodils, I'm struck by the way that a familiar plant is used in quite an interesting and unfamiliar way, because we're all used to seeing great drifts of daffs, but nearly always in grass and on the edge of trees, whereas these are used in borders. And actually, the closer you look, the more you realize how carefully they've been selected and placed. So, for example, right in front of me here, I've got the familiar thalia, which I grow in the writing garden. It's a beautiful white daffodil, wonderful fragrance. And next to it is martinet. And as you look across, you're seeing this repetition of colour and form and shape. But each one has enough space to have interest just in itself as a plant. And I don't think you often see daffodils doing that. It's a really good way of growing them. So it's, in a way, reclaiming daffodils as a plant worthy of its own space in a border. But to make that work, it takes great skill in choice and spacing and positioning. Whilst this is obviously a very British garden, it also reflects the passion that the late Queen had for the Commonwealth, and it does that by including plants which otherwise you're unlikely to find in the average British garden. And none is more unlikely than this specimen behind me. This is the lancewood, Pseudoplanax crassifolius. Now this looks, quite frankly, like a dried up, sad relic of a plant, as though it is on its last legs, if not died already. The theory is it has evolved in its native New Zealand to look as though it's dead, to evade predators that would otherwise eat the leaves. And it grows until it reaches a height out of reach, at which point it explodes into a round ball of very green, healthy foliage. And here it is, in the middle of London, in this garden. The choice of planting is intriguing. On a sun-baked, beautiful day, the whole 2-acre garden positively radiates against the intense blue of a spring sky. To find out more about the garden's design, I'm meeting Matt Pottage. Now, Matt, you told me your title, which I think is rather wonderful, so I'm going to say it. You are Head of Horticulture and Landscape Strategy of the Royal Parks.
That's right. It's quite a mouthful, isn't it?
Oh, it's very impressive. I'm impressed. If the late Queen had been here to visit it, what do you think she would have thought?
I think she would have loved it. I mean, she was very open-minded, so I think and hope there would have been lots of plants in here she would recognise, but maybe in a setting and a layout she wouldn't.
So tell me about the different areas. What's going on here and why?
So when you first arrive, you come in the deep shade of these big mature hornbeams at the entrance, woodland planting style, great inspiration for dry shade. And then the water area, water plants, waterside marginals, there's lots of irises around the big pool here. And that then flows into more of a matrix style of grasses and perennials.
So matrix meaning you have one or two key plants that are repeated and then you intersperse amongst them.
That's right, that's right. When you look at the planting plan and you think, gosh, this is complicated, but when you walk through it, when it's finished, it all feels quite naturalistic and soft and easy to the eye. And then those planting beds then start to blend into meadows. And they are meadows, but with flowering bulbs through them. And I'm interested because they're on a low fertility soil mix, if they will persist long term. Because as you will know, on rich soils, your grass takes over and then wildflowers disappear. So we're excited to see how they work.
How do you come up with this as the plan and the strategy?
So the process here was actually from our trustees. Our board of trustees felt a new garden to open 2 acres of this park that hadn't been visited by people before would be a wonderful thing for London and the wider nation, really. And it is for people. It's for park users, for gardeners. I mean, hopefully people will come here and learn something about the plants. And the geese enjoying it today.
Is there an environmental plan as well?
So always to increase biodiversity is a desire. So by the very nature of a huge diversity of plants, a diversity of habitat. I don't know if you're aware, but Regent's Park is the last known site in central London for breeding hedgehogs. So all the log piles, there are some fallen trees, there's loads of ivy on the ground, because it isn't where the budget ran out, it's all the hedgehog habitat.
It's planted deliberately using small plants. Is that a hard sell for the first few years?
We're celebrating a bit of a slow gardening movement here. We want these things to establish slowly and well and root deeply. So, you know, it may not look to everybody like the Chelsea Flower Show on day one, and I don't think that's a problem. And we're happy to celebrate that and explain that. And I think that'll be the right way to establish a garden in what is quite challenging conditions with the soil mixes.
What do you think people are going to say? How will they react?
I hope they'll love it. I think they'll be debates, and then probably people say, wow, we didn't expect to see something like this in a park. I don't think people will necessarily expect this diversity of plants in a park that's free to wander in. So, I mean, I hope people will feel, you know, this is really special.
It strikes me 2 things about this central path that are significant. The first is it's the only straight line in the whole garden. It cuts through it. And the second thing is, this is a public space. It's going to be thronged with people. And this central path is rather like a walkway, main avenue, as the crowds make their way along through the garden. Now, this garden is right in the center of Regent's Park, although I have to say it's tucked away. It's surrounded by trees. You feel as though you could be in the countryside. But actually, it's right in the heart of London, and Londoners have enjoyed access to the park for hundreds of years, and Advolly has explored its history.
If you've ever been to London, it's highly likely that you will have found yourself here at the Regent's Park. This green oasis is 400 acres of calm amidst the noise and chaos of the capital. Millions of people cross its footpaths every year to relax, play, enjoy the gardens, or visit one of the oldest zoos in the world. And this is a park that has always had a royal connection. Henry VIII first created this park as a place to hunt deer. But by 1810, one Georgian prince's passion, the Prince Regent, later George IV, gave the park a new purpose and a new name. The prince, known as Prinny to his court, wanted the best of everything. Man-made lakes, canals, sweeping vistas, including a new palace for himself, and no less than 56 villas for his cronies, all in a wonderful parkland setting. But unfortunately, like many of the prince's grand schemes, he bit off more than he could chew. And he basically lost interest. In the end, only 8 villas were built, and there certainly wasn't any money for a palace. Over time, this estate, initially designed for the elite, had to be opened up to the general public, but only for 2 days a week. And now it's a park for all of London every day of the year. It wasn't just royalty who radically changed the face of the park, but also its garden designers. These are the Italian gardens, created by one of the best designers of the day, William Andrews Nesfield. Known by colleagues as the Major, Nesfield, who was ex-military, brought precision to his designs in over 250 gardens and parks across Britain, and he certainly made his mark here at Regent's Park. This was the high point of Victorian carpet bedding, with thousands of annuals laid out in complex geometric patterns, which were frequently replaced throughout the year. When the Major's son, Markham, took over from his father in 1864, it wasn't just the plants which changed. He brought in a completely new style of garden. Markham preferred a looser and more naturalistic planting style. He filled this space with evergreens and deciduous trees, in complete contrast to his father's formal designs. No matter what the style of the different gardens in the park, the one thing they all demanded was lots and lots of fabulous plants. The Victorian era was a time when plants from all around the world were being brought back to London. There was a great deal of competition and excitement to showcase these new exotic plants, the likes of which many people had never seen before. Hundreds of workers grew tens of thousands of plants, not just for the Regent's Park, but for all the other London royal parks. By the mid-19th century, Victorian engineering was world-class. It was possible to build greenhouses on an extraordinary scale. The Royal Botanic Society built a magnificent conservatory designed by Decimus Burton, who later went on to build the Palm House at Kew. Regent's Park remained a floral powerhouse until 1914, when World War I changed everything. Right in the heart of the park, the government built an enormous sorting centre for sending out mail to the troops out on the front line. It was the largest wooden building in the world. It covered over 5 acres. But by 1930, Queen Mary, the wife of George V, brought new plants and an abundance of flowers back to the park. In her name, one of the best and largest rose gardens in the world was created. But then World War II struck, and the park had to return to a war footing. With the country facing incredible food shortages, almost 1.5 million allotments were created for people to dig for victory, and Regent's Park was no different. Between the anti-aircraft guns and air raid shelters, hundreds of new allotments were created in the park and given to local families. Today, the botanical and regency splendours of the park belong to a different age and time. But I am so excited about this next chapter in the history of the Regent's Park.
I do think that the history of the parks in London is fascinating. And one of the things behind them, as Advolly pointed out, is that technology was a driving force. The fact that you could grow things in heated greenhouses, that plants were coming in from all over the world. And this site here, of course, this particular part of Regent's Park, was 2 acres of greenhouses pumping out plants for the royal parks. But that changed in 2018. These huge greenhouses, once packed with plants and people, were superseded by a new nursery in Hyde Park, and the site fell into disrepair. All the unused infrastructure then had to be carefully cleared before the garden could start to be created, although one key building survived. This was an industrial site. And that explains one anomaly here in the garden, because when I walked in, I looked at that tower and I thought, wonder why that's there. Wonder why they built that like that. It didn't really fit in with the rest of the garden. But that is the one surviving remnant of the greenhouses that were here. It remains as, if you like, a tribute to the past, because it's the water tower that fed those greenhouses. So the history of this site rolls on. You can't undo that, even though the garden itself is looking squarely to the future. After a major cleanup and repair, the water tower now has a viewing platform to allow you to see right across the garden. It also provides somewhere for swifts to nest and bats to roost. This is the other side of the tower. It's been embellished by these ironwork flowers, and the story behind them, as with so much of the garden, relates to the late Queen, because these represent the 4 different countries of Britain. So you have the Tudor rose, you have the Scottish thistle, the Irish shamrock, and a leek representing Wales. And on top of that, they were all part of the late Queen's coronation gown in 1953. So the whole garden is interwoven with references to the late Queen. Now, I've got lucky today. The sun is glorious, the garden is looking fantastic, and everything is just perfect. But when Adam came here last winter, the story was a bit different.
It may be a freezing cold, wet November morning in Regent's Park, but I'm feeling like a very lucky boy, because today I'm being joined by some wonderful members of the great British public who've applied to be part of the planting team. People from all over the country have come along to take part in today's mass planting event.
I queued for 16 hours when she was lying in state, and that was a very special moment. So this almost feels like a part of a journey to commemorate late Queen, who I know was very keen on gardens and gardening.
I loved Queen Elizabeth. I just think it's a lovely thing to do for her. It's nice coming together with other people that are like-minded. I'll be able to come back and see it when it's open, which will be really nice.
I'm pleased to see that Matt isn't fazed by today's weather. He leads all the gardening teams across the Royal Parks.
Looks good, doesn't it?
Today is really special. It's the first time the public have been in here. So we've got a couple of hundred people coming, and they're going to help us plant 11,000 bulbs. So we have time slots. They'll have half an hour bulb planting, 20-minute tour of the garden so they get to see where we're at. But we've had loads of interest in it, which has been really brilliant.
But what's lovely as well is that physical connection that those 200 people will have with the garden. Yeah. It's got to end up being a really special space.
We talk a lot at the Royal Parks that parks are for people, and they can come back and see those bulbs flowering later next year. We're really grateful people want to be part of it.
How much more is there to do?
We're about 80% planted. 200,000 bulbs gone in here, so a lot of bulb planting, but we want it to be filled with colour.
I think it's lovely, isn't it, you know, to create something in the memory of our late Queen, who we both know loved gardens and gardening.
There's many plants in here she loved, you know, lily of the valleys, flowering magnolias. So yeah, that connection to the late Queen will be very much through this.
I can't wait to plant a few bulbs and get stuck in.
I'm glad to hear that. The trowels are at the ready.
Come on, then,
bulbs are ready to go in.
The volunteers have got off to a flying start.
Pointy side up, root plate down.
So, what's brought you down here then?
I spent time actually recovering from sepsis after a hospital stay in the area. So I've seen a lot of the park through all the different seasons, and actually for me, hearing about the planting opportunity was really exciting, because I just wanted to come give something to the park as well. But there's a massive property in being able to just connect with nature.
Yeah.
You know, you can be very busy in sort of the world of work across London, you know, hustle and bustle of kind of the city as well. I think actually sometimes it's good for people to just take a step, slow down, maybe come out and connect with the green space.
Can I come do some planting? What made you apply?
I've done some community gardening in my borough and at university, and I just thought it's a cool opportunity to like be part of something that will be here forever.
So growing at home, what type of gardening do you enjoy? Is it sort of flower ornamentals or more sort of veggie and fruit?
I grow at home in my family garden, so I tend to focus more on herbs and fruits and vegetables, just so I can have something to like bring inside. But I suppose for some people, gardening is very personal. But being in the Royal Park, there's that communal sense as well, and that's really nice.
Oh, I noticed that you turned up fully prepared. So I'm presuming you're a keen gardener.
I am, yeah. I live in quite a built-up area, very small garden. It's lovely to be in an expansive place.
Yeah. When you come back in April, what's the first spot you're going to walk to?
Taking up the reins of the garden is new head gardener Fiona Pack.
I feel like I'm dodging the bulbs on the way to you.
Yeah, don't be stepping on it.
I know. It's going all right, isn't it?
Yeah. It's such an exciting day. Yeah, it's great.
So today, what we got? We got a mix of
Yeah, so we've got alliums,
Yeah.
we've got tulips. We're using species tulips,
Yeah.
so, you know, we're going to get that perennial flowering. We've got some great hyacinth, mascari going in.
This is the last lot of bulbs that have going in. What's gone in before?
So we've done a lot of the woodland planting.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of daffodils.
Yeah.
We've got snowdrops, cyclamen going in, yeah. And then, of course, we've got all the plants to go in. So we've got 60,000 perennials going in as well.
Wow.
A very mixed planting, quite Mediterranean, drought-tolerant plants going in, like flow mist. But then your herby plants as well. We want this to be quite a sensory garden as well.
Yeah. So, you've been here, what, 3 or 4 months? What was it like when you got the phone call and said, oh, yes, you've got the job, you are the head gardener?
I couldn't believe it. I'm still pinching myself, to be honest. It's such a wonderful project to be a part of. Yeah. We get so many tourists to Regent's Park. Yeah. The Queen was loved all over the world, We get so many visitors.
And you're in charge?
Yeah. No pressure. No.
To create a more naturalistic style, Fiona's team have just scattered the bulbs across the soil, ready for the volunteers to plant where they land. And one that features heavily in the scheme is an absolute favourite of mine.
I was really pleased when I got here and found out they were planting Tulip sylvestris. It's a really versatile plant. I've grown it edge of woodland, I've grown it under a hedgerow, in a sort of gravel garden, so it'll go well in sort of sun, semi-shade, but does love those free draining conditions. And if it's happy, it will start to seed about a little bit. And this, come sort of March time, will get to about that height, so probably about 20, 25 centimetres, and have a beautiful sort of yellow bell that just hangs. Species tulips are very different, obviously, from a lot of the bigger, more flowery tulips that normally you get 1 year, 2 year, and then maybe year 3 it gets weaker. Whereas these, if they're happy, they're only going to get better.
Despite the cold and rain, it's clearly been a very special day for everyone who has taken part. And I think the personal connection they've made with this new garden will last a lifetime.
It's been an honour, really. I took a picture of the spot where I planted everything so I can pinpoint it when I come back.
It feels very special to be a part of this and a wonderful way to remember her.
Statues and monuments are great, they're wonderful, but in a space like this where people will come with their friends, there will be proposals here. People will come with their children. So when people lose the living memory of our Queen, there will be new memories laid down here.
Look at that over there. People from all over the place have come just to play their part, which I think is absolutely brilliant, because every single one of them, hands in the soil, planting bulbs, but more than anything, going home with wonderful memories. Brilliant.
Well, I don't think you could have a greater contrast between what was clearly a wet and cold day for Adam and all that incredible team planting, and now. It's bathed in sunshine. The garden is just glowing with colour. Now, Fiona, you are the head gardener. Congratulations to you and everybody on that day who suffered in order that we might enjoy it. But are you enjoying it? Is this what you had hoped for and what you had planned?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds cheesy, but yeah, everything and more. Yeah.
Just remind me how many bulbs are here?
It's about 200,000. Yeah.
That is a lot.
Yeah, but it pays off. I love bulbs for this. You get this whole succession of colour and, joy.
Well, the succession is something I wanted to talk to you about, because obviously this isn't going to last. So in 10 days' time, it's not going to look like this, is it? It's going to look different, maybe better. So how are you planning for that?
Well, the bulbs were planned so well that there is a succession, and because we were planting from October up until about January, we've still got some daffodils that are in bud and tulips. So hopefully there is going to be a bit of a delay. And then we've got alliums. They might be early, I'm not sure.
Which alliums have you got?
Oh, we've got a whole mix. We've got ambassador, we've got altissimum, things like nectarscordum as well.
Is it looking like you imagined? Are there surprises?
There's a few surprises, down to squirrels, I think.
In what way?
The odd daffodil popping up where we hadn't planned it, but I mean, that's, you know, it's naturalistic planting. I don't mind the odd little nature step.
So you've got different areas. Are there any that are already becoming favourites of yours?
I think it has to be the area right behind you.
That bank?
Yeah, yeah.
It's beautiful.
I love the whole topography of this garden, and yeah, you've got this big slope, absolute mix of bulbs, big bold colours, and then that kind of sub-shrub Mediterranean-y layer. Yeah, I really like it.
And I guess that whole business, the Mediterranean thing, is you are planning for gardening in a world that is changing climatically.
So the garden is very much a naturalistic kind of Mediterranean-style planting.
Do you think this is something that will inspire and educate people, or is it going to be quite a strange thing for them to take in?
This is still quite experimental gardening. We're not really sure how things are going to react.
And what do you see as the biggest immediate problems here?
Do you know, it could be the geese.
Really? That's not an answer that many people give in their gardens, is it?
It's my first time working in a park, and we've got plenty of ducks and geese, and yeah, they've started to move in, and I'm very fond of them, but I'll be curious to see what they start nibbling, especially the goslings, yeah.
It looks fantastic.
Thank you.
And you're clearly doing a great job.
Thank you.
One of the more distinctive aspects of the garden is the gravelly substrate that the plants are growing in. Matt was able to explain the thinking behind it. What looks like gravel actually feels like concrete. Tell me about the soil and how it's come about.
Yeah, so the site had a lot of concrete.
The concrete was because the greenhouses were on a concrete basis, were they?
And they had some concrete bases, some gravel bases, and all the path network between them, standing out areas, cold frames. So yeah, lots of concrete. And I think maybe historically, one would have got rid of all that and ship in nice soil.
Yeah.
We didn't want to do that, so it was a real challenge from a sustainability point of view, is how do we keep it in the garden when we use it? So we had to bring in crushers. They're crazy big machines that came in and almost crushed down, spat it out like gravel. That could then be mixed in with the very sticky clay soils. It's about 75% concrete crush to 25% clay.
Tell me a bit about that, because there's clay and clay.
This is clay. This is really clay. And I was actually reading the other day an old Victorian book about the royal parks, and it said the Regent's Park is on the most hopeless, sticky, yellow, appalling clay. And we've got something now very free draining, but of course very alkaline because of all the lime from the concrete.
Yeah. I mean, it must have been quite daunting for you at that stage, thinking this garden is going to open to the public, and here am I with a building site worthy of a motorway.
I know. It is daunting, and I think people will be surprised. I mean, this isn't something you see every day in gardens, let alone public parks. What really interests me is growing things slow and growing them hard for resilience. So we did actually do some trials to see how the plants would perform. And because the plant's in this very stressful, free-draining environment, what it does is it spends a lot of time putting down a huge, deep root system looking for nutrients and moisture. And what we found in the trial is the plants grew harder. And by that, I mean, you know, they were tight, there was less leaf, they weren't as sappy, nothing needed staking.
Are you saying that we gardeners should be incorporating crushed concrete or brick or whatever into our soil?
No, absolutely not. And if you have nice soil at home, you shouldn't be bringing in concrete and mixing it in. But what we are saying is if you've, say, got a new build with rubble in the garden, or you've got rid of a patio or an old driveway and there's loads of sand and rubble, don't worry about it. Just change your planting palette accordingly.
And your planting palette, to be clear, is what one broadly might call sort of Mediterranean plants.
Broadly so, Monty, yes. So lots of grasses and perennials, but shrubs that people will recognise, like lavenders, like rosemaries. But of course, as you know, they're like the really good free drainage in the winter. And as we're getting wetter winters and on the heavy soils here at Regent's Park, I actually think it'd be really interesting how these things last.
It is amazing to think that this new garden was once the old Royal Park's nursery complex. And there are 8 Royal Parks in London, which all need hundreds of thousands of plants each year to look their best. The sheer volume of planting is therefore huge. They are all grown today in a hidden corner of Hyde Park. And last month, Carol was given a guided tour by the Royal Park's nursery manager, Rob Downing.
Wow, I just cannot believe the scale of it.
I know, it's really hidden in Hyde Park. The only way you can see it is from the air.
But how can you hide a place like this? I mean, how big is it?
We have 12 glass houses, which make up to be 8,200 square metres of glass. It's the secret part of the Royal Parks where we grow all the seasonal bedding requirements, herbaceous plants, and we just started propagating trees as well.
Fantastic. Each of these sections, are they different temperatures, different climate zones?
Yes, each can be manipulated to the plants that we're growing there, so in terms of shading, temperature, humidity.
It's no wonder they all look so happy. Look at the size of this potting bench.
I know, we had these specially made because we do a huge amount of potting here. 280,000 plants for the summer, you know, it's a colossal number.
280,000. I can hardly contemplate that. So they all start here and then they all go out.
They all go out
all over London.
Yeah.
Look at this.
This is our Zone 5 stockhouse.
Wow.
This contains a whole collection of plants, such as the salvias here that are just being potted up.
This is absolutely fascinating. So, what are you doing?
We are currently potting up some of the salvias that are going to be out in the park this summer, potting them on into 2-liter pots so they get bigger, branch out more, and we're also pinching out any ones that need to be pinched out.
Just nipping the top.
Usually 3 nodes, give it a little snip.
Snip. And then you get a bushier plant quicker, don't you?
Exactly, that's my plan.
So all these are from cuttings that you've taken from the mother plant?
Exactly, Carol.
Fantastic.
All of them are cuttings.
I mean, that's the way to do it, isn't it? Instead of everything having to be brought in wherever you can. And you're doing the same, James?
Yeah, just potting them up, getting them into the sizes that they need to be for when they go out for production.
And you've got nice, firm hands. That's what I love doing.
I try.
In fact, I can hardly keep my hands off. Come on, let's have a go.
Go on, have a go.
So when would you take your cuttings from your mother plants?
So now would be the perfect time if you have a couple of salvia plants in your garden. But because we have to make such big numbers, we are continuously taking cuttings all through the winter months. So
And salvias are quite good from winter cuttings. You know, at home, if you haven't got a vast edifice like this, you can keep your plants even on a windowsill if you haven't got a greenhouse.
Exactly.
And it's quite interesting, Sydney, to think that some of these might be in a scheme somewhere in the heart of London.
It's going to look beautiful this year.
We have a collection of everything here: centurias, butylons, plectranthus.
Look at the shine on these begonias. Look at them.
This is a beautiful one, isn't it? This is one of the stock plants that we keep of Begonia richmondensis, and we propagate from these every year, and it is a real firm favourite of mine. It's so different to those traditional double-flowered begonias, which don't do that well in our climate out in London. But these are great. They can cope with some drier conditions. They have these really subtle but beautiful flowers, and even the foliage has a slight tinge of pink to it, so it's a firm favourite of mine. And we like to grow the plants that you don't necessarily see elsewhere, so it does encourage interest from our visitors and park users. We often get them writing in, what's this plant?
Yeah.
Where can I get this from? So it's really great to have something slightly different.
I think that might become a firm favourite with lots of people. I want one. You've got some incredible plants. I think of a bedding display and thinking of it all down there and all neat and nice, but a weeping fig.
Yeah. We like our flower beds have a structure. So these go to the flower beds in front of Buckingham Palace, our most prestigious planting. And these are what we call dot plants, are specimen plants that give some variation, some height to the beds.
Aaron.
Hi, how you doing? You okay?
All the better for seeing you and these wonderful plants. So what are you doing to these pelargoniums?
At the moment now, I'm just taking out the side shoots.
Yeah.
Because when you take out the side shoot out of these pelargonium, it gives this strength up to grow up.
And you want them higher than this?
Yeah, I want
them going up?
Yeah.
Because they've got to be fit for a king, isn't that right?
Definitely.
Going in front of Buckingham Palace? Yeah?
Exactly.
And its significance is that they're exactly the same colour as the tunics of the King's Guards.
The guard at Buckingham Palace, yeah.
I feel like standing to attention, just like your pelargoniums.
Everything have to be planted just before the King's birthday.
How wonderful. So there must be quite a lot of pressure right up until that time.
Pressure right through the air.
Yeah.
Always have a lot of pressure on this. It's not easy to grow in this pelargonium.
No.
Yeah, you have to have love for the plant. Yeah. I even play music to my plants them, you know?
Do
a lot of classical music.
Classical?
Yeah.
You only sing to them?
I do sing to them. I do sing to them.
Well, you must have a beautiful voice because they obviously respond brilliantly.
I do. Oh, thank you.
So this is where it's all happening, isn't it? So you're all volunteers?
We are indeed.
Yeah. So come on, show me what you're doing. You're taking cuttings from these plants?
Yes, Lady Plymouth. And so what we're doing is we count 2 nodes from the bottom and then cutting, say, about there, do a cut. Yeah. And then, as you know, strip it off.
Then
Good.
once you take off all the leaves,
yeah,
so that there's nothing remaining on the stem, you pop it in the plug and then you give the lady just a little squeeze.
Oh, does she mind?
She's used to it.
Yeah, I'm sure she is.
Then they pop one into this tray here.
All right. Absolutely brilliant. So all these plants here, have you grown them all?
We have.
And they're all going to go out into the parks?
They are.
How lovely. I mean, did you realise that this nursery was here?
No, I never knew. Who knew?
It's magical.
It's a well-kept secret.
Not any longer,
Oh.
it's not. Well, I know all the plants you grow are special, but aren't these extra special?
These are extra special. These are plants that we've been growing for the new garden at Regent's Park to commemorate the life of Queen Elizabeth II.
Wow, fantastic. I mean, that's one of my favourite herbaceous plants of all time, isn't it? Salvia carodonna. So that's a plant that's just going to mingle with everything, stand for ages, looks beautiful right the way through, doesn't it?
Yeah, excellent choice. You know, it's a plant really like here, and salvias are one of my favourite, and I think they will do really well in that garden.
Yeah. So this is quite different from some of those lovely tender salvias we saw. This is a toughie, isn't it?
It's tough, and the garden has been created using recycled aggregate, so this will stand up really well to those conditions in the garden.
It's a garden with a difference, isn't it? It really is quite different from anything we've ever seen before.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so special, that it's a new garden, a new style for us as the Royal Parks. You know, it's not the traditional planting, so I think it will be a big draw for visitors to come and see it and be inspired by it. I'm really proud if that happens out in the park.
I hope it's an enormous success. I can hardly believe it. What a privilege to be here in this magical place and to see the love and nurture that all these wonderful people put into producing these beautiful plants. It's paradise.
I knew there were some greenhouses in Hyde Park, but I had no idea it It was on that scale, it was that modern, and they're producing that many plants. I'm blown away. Incredibly impressive. Now, I also knew I would find you here, but I don't know which one's Samara and which one's Neve.
I'm Samara.
You're Samara,
I'm
therefore
Neve.
you must be Neve. Hello, very nice to see you. Have you both been working here since day one?
That's right, yes. We moved into the garden in October time. So yeah, the gardening team have been planting since then, so six, 7
planting,
months.
I gather it's over 200,000 bulbs.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm very proud, it's a real feat.
But worth it, because I have to say,
Absolutely.
I walked in this morning, I just thought, this is extraordinary. And do you get that when you come to work now?
Absolutely, the gratification of coming through and be like, okay, we really made it through the autumn and winter, and now we get to reap the rewards of this sun and all the colour that's here.
And what are you planting now?
We're planting some Salvia caradonas.
Carol went to see these plants being grown and prepared for here. And those are the same, are they?
Absolutely, the very same.
Perfect. And these will flower when?
They'll be flowering around about like May to June time, I would imagine, yeah.
So are coming through after the bulbs?
Absolutely, but the good thing about them is once you deadhead them, they should get a little bit of a second flush as well.
And they're tough and they'll cope?
Yeah, once they're established, they're really drought tolerant and they can stay in over the winter because they're quite hardy.
And will there be a lot more of adding in, or are these just last additions?
These are last additions, so quite a lot of the perennials have already been planted and they're still very small at the moment.
And in terms of this style of gardening, is this something that both of you are familiar with and have done before?
No, this is quite new to me. Yeah, so working in a bed that's made up of largely recycled aggregate, but a very interesting experiment.
So you're really on pioneering work here.
Definitely, like we both feel quite lucky to be part of something that is almost a bit experimental.
Well, I really admire the way that you're sort of all creating something new between you at every level. And if it continues looking as good as this, it's going to be wonderful. And all your hard work is paying off, and I know it's going to give a lot of people a lot of pleasure. It's going to be absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for talking.
Thank you.
The late Queen was a regular at RHS Chelsea Flower Show and was well known to have a particular fondness for lily of the valley and magnolias. This magnolia is the centerpiece of the entire garden. And I say that it's flowering especially for me. The truth is, the flowers or the tepals are falling almost as I speak. But it's an interesting one because it's called Wadder's Memory, and it's a Magnolia salicifolia, which means that the leaves are rather narrower than normal, and the form of the tree is pyramidal, and it stays that shape. Now, that's really unusual for magnolias. So it's really good for a smaller garden, and yet it has real presence. Now, this magnolia is standing solitary and splendid in the middle of the garden. But Francis has been to North Shropshire to see magnolias in every conceivable shape and form.
When early spring lands, it's a delight to see the tiny petals of delicate blossom. But some trees don't bother with delicate. Magnolia flowers are big, like huge bowls or strappy cups, and they are a riot of colour. This collection of magnolias and more is part of Cherry Tree Arboretum, planted by veteran nurseryman John Ravenscroft and his wife Liz over the last 20 years. And although these trees are still very young, their ancestors have an incredible history. Magnolias are found all over the globe and are one of our oldest flowering plants, with a story that spans millions of years. Fossilised remains of magnolias have been found dating to the time of the dinosaurs around 100 million years ago. And they've survived for many good reasons. In the wild, these are woodland trees, but rather than being grouped, they're dotted singly throughout the forest. So this mass of big flowers, some of them very scented, act as an enormous beacon for pollinators. And because magnolias were growing before the bees and butterflies we know today existed, they've evolved to be pollinated by different insects. This stigmatal column is absolutely covered in pollen that beetles like to eat. Now, they're not quite as delicate as bees, so they'll crash their way into here and absolutely cover their bodies in pollen. To ensure that each bloom doesn't pollinate itself, the female part of the flower deep inside this column ripens first, before its pollen. And magnolias emit a scent that beetles love. So even before these petals, or tepals as they're actually called, are open, they will worm their way or munch their way inside the flower, covered in pollen from the next door flower, and pollinate this one. The strong, thick tepals of many magnolias evolved to cope with the munching, blundering beetles, but modern hybrids can capitalise on these sturdy flowers. This is Galaxy, and the really special thing about this magnolia is that it has two successions of flowers. So you can see these big ones that are in their prime now, but there are also loads of buds ready and waiting to open up later. So you could have 2 months of constant flowering. And although all magnolias do drop their tepals, this one does it really quickly, so they have no chance to turn brown. A little breath of wind and the whole thing is cleaned up beautifully. One of the worries for magnolias is the risk of frost damage. Pink flowers tend to fare better than white, and it's harder to see the damage. But the positioning of these trees is vital. Most of the magnolias in this arboretum are planted on a slope, on a hill, and that's because cold air rolls downhill and brings that frost with it. And you can see that this magnolia has been quite damaged on the back of it, whereas on this lower side, the tepals are completely unblemished because they've been protected by this hill. It's partly why magnolias are great in town gardens. They're protected by the buildings. As a nurseryman, the creator of this amazing arboretum used to sell magnolias, and these beds are his magnolia library, full of the mother trees used for grafting. It's rather astonishing to see so many magnolias crammed into one space in all different colours and forms, but the yellow ones are particularly interesting. These tend to be less affected by the frost than the other colours because they bloom later. Now, this one is called Elizabeth, and it's a beautiful primrose yellow with a really classic magnolia flower shape. But just behind me over there is another yellow one called Gold Star, and that's got the star-shaped flowers. It's really unusual and absolutely stunning. These beds also dispel the myth that all magnolias have to be huge. Because these have all been used to graft from every year, they have been really heavily pruned. These ones are stellata anyway, so they're naturally smaller. So if you had a really small garden, you'd probably be drawn to this style rather than the other. But this space just goes to prove that even with the big ones, you can prune them and keep them small. You just really have to know what you're doing. Thanks to modern breeding, there are hundreds of hybrids and varied flower shapes that will stay small for ages. This is Jeannie, and the lovely thing about this magnolia is it's incredibly slow growing, but it also has really very beautiful flowers. They're almost tulip-like in their form and a really deep colour that you don't often see. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen one this dark. So it's a really interesting magnolia. Magnolias are found around the world, from Canada to Venezuela and way into Asia. They've evolved to cope with varied climates and terrain, and they have stood the test of time. One of the reasons why magnolias may have survived for so long is that their branches are really incredibly pliable. They bend in storms and wind where other trees might break. So they're real survivors. They're ancient, they're resilient, and they are incredibly beautiful trees to have in your garden.
Whilst magnolias are by and large very resilient trees, like any plant, they do need the right conditions in order to thrive. Now, this is a swale, and I like a swale because they're ingenious and yet very simple. In principle, it's just a ditch, in this case lined with London clay, so it holds water for quite a long time, not indefinitely. So it can be wet for months on end, particularly in winter, and then it can dry out completely in summer. But there is enough water in the clay, in the soil, although the surface may be dry, for plants that need moisture to survive, like the Caltha, like the iris you have there, like your Ligularia. However, the banks remain dry. The water flows down and then is held in the ditch. So you can plant the banks or the top surface with those Mediterranean plants that need sharp drainage, even though it's very wet in winter, and you can plant the bottom of the swale with plants that need lots of water, even though it's very dry in summer. Everybody's happy, and you have really good diversity of planting. I've been very aware while I've been here that I'm not here truly alone because it's humming with life. There are bees buzzing around everywhere. There are butterflies. The birds are swooping around. It feels in the middle of this great city like a true nature reserve as well as a beautiful garden. And that transformation from a building site with acres of concrete is nothing short of a small miracle. I can't tell you what a joy it's been, the luxury and the privilege of having it to myself. It's going to be open for everybody on the 27th of April, and I would say definitely try and come along. Enjoy it as much as I have done, and I think this is a garden that will be worth revisiting for many years to come. Well, that's it for today. So, I'll see you back at Longmeadow with Med next time. But until then, bye-bye.